You're listening to Copy Chief Radio. Get all the episodes and join the community at copychief.com.
What's up, friends? Thanks for being here. Appreciate your ear hole. I plan to fill it with good things. Thrilled to be talking with Henry Bingaman again. Henry, at least once, was on my original show, Truth About Marketing, one of the great interviews there. If you don't know Henry, you'll be getting to know him even better soon, not just here, but he's stepping out and doing a lot of cool stuff on his own for the first time. See, Henry was one of the premier, more behind the scenes A-list copywriters in the financial niche, primarily, also health. You may have seen some of the work and training he's done with our friend Marcella Allison, worked at a very high level writing multi-million-dollar promos at Money Map Press alongside Jed Canty. Henry's always been a really generous contributor to Copy Chief. So I appreciate that, Henry. And thrilled to see you again and to catch up, man. You've had a lot of life changes in the last year or so here.
Yeah, I have. It's great to be here. I think this will actually be our fourth podcast together.
Well, really? Okay, cool.
Yeah,
I knew we'd done it a few times, but we had a great training with you and Jed, just kind of talking, getting in the heads of copy chiefs at that level. That was fascinating. What a colorful time you had working with Jed at Money Map. I mean, you guys did all kinds of stuff, not just writing more traditional Agora style promos, but Jed was an early investor in some really innovative cannabis industry things and charities and all kinds of stuff. What made you leave? I guess we'll just start there, because what people may not know is you recently retired from copywriting completely, just sort of closed the door on that chapter and said, I got a little dough, I got a little time, and I want to figure out what I want to do.
Yeah, it was an interesting time. 2020 really kind of shook up the world, much less my life. So, I was living in a city, I was doing the copywriting thing. And then it just, I don't know, it all felt kind of, people were dying. Stores were shutting down. The economy was getting turned upside down. And I was writing financial promos. Like we did a big promo with Joe Montana at Money Map. That was the last thing I worked on there. Almost the last thing I worked on there. It launched right into the pandemic, like 3 days after it really hit America and the market really tanked. So the thing just didn't, it would work for months on this thing and it tanked. Financial copywriting is like that a lot of times. You get these huge hits that you spent 6 months working on, like the John Boehner thing I did when we originally launched the National Institute for Cannabis Investors. We sat down, we did this promo. It like broke the front end sales record for Agora for like the first day, 10,000 sales the first day, which was pretty awesome. And then other times you'd work for 6 months and something would tank. Or, I'd have promos go out, or we'd be ready to film and they'd kill the stock that we were trying to tell people to invest in.
Oh, man.
Yeah. They'd literally kill the division we were bragging about through the whole promo. So you just had to start over. I really love the people at Money Map. And, Jed's been my mentor since 2011, I think, when we started working together at Newsmax. And I learned so much from him and really about innovating in copy, which is what Jed's the best at. But it just felt like, what kind of impact am I having on the world? Basically, financial copywriting is the people that buy those things, especially the back end products. It's rich people that you're helping to get richer. And that doesn't feel like it makes the best impact on the world. Not that it's a bad thing. I don't have any guilt over doing it. But like when governments are going authoritarian, in my view, and they're shutting down economies and, nobody can trust anybody anymore on both sides. Like the level of trust in the world has just dropped to nothing. What kind of impact am I having? Right. I've made money. I have enough. I have a fully paid off house. I don't need the money coming in. So why not start a project that I think can actually help people, actually make a difference in individuals' lives, not just my own life. So that's why I quit, started a podcast, started an email list, and I've been working with Rachel Mazza, who you know very well. We're launching a product in a couple weeks. So it's been a journey. It's been stressful, the ups and downs. Definitely a learning experience, which I really enjoy. I kind of like getting my butt kicked sometimes in business. It just reminds you not to be too cocky. I was at the top of the copywriting world and nobody thought my fart smelled, or they wouldn't tell me. And so, at that point, you're just like, I don't know. It's good to be back in the world and get humbled by reality sometimes and have to work through it and remind yourself that you actually do have the talent to do this.
That's right. And the wherewithal is such a big part of it, right? It's easy to get your ass kicked and want to just go, oh, that didn't work. Well, I guess I'll reinvent again, especially if you got a little cushion. But it's a lonely thing to lose in business. And especially as you start to grow a team and things like that, you really got to be the upbeat, optimistic face of things. And sometimes you're just like full of doubt yourself. It's those things I think that people, unless they've done it, really been entrepreneurs, can't really appreciate. So I love that it speaks to why you're such a great copywriter, is because I always say the moment somebody becomes a real writer is when they crave the harsh critique, because they're past the ego part in the emotional reaction, and all they care about is the outcome. It's like, let me learn. And then, of course, you have to apply your own filter to what kind of feedback you're going to take or things you're going to fight for. But man, without the willingness to do that, you can't get good at either thing.
It's unrealistic to expect the emotional impact to go away. I think you just learn to process it better. So like I'd get a critique from Jed or Mike Ward or somebody, and I'd still be fuming and think that these guys are idiots. They don't see my genius, and then I'd go for a walk, I'd work out, I'd do something. And then it'd start to come down. It's like, well, maybe he had a point here. And like, all right, I could rethink this angle. And eventually you come back down. But I think you could just process the emotions better.
Yeah.
That's the skill, because you're going to have the emotional reaction. It's right. Impossible as a human to not have those emotional reactions, because you do feel somewhat attacked when somebody critiques your work. If you launch a product that doesn't do well, you feel like a failure, but it's not you. It's just the idea wasn't right. You just have to learn to keep moving, take the next step, process the emotions and go forward.
Yeah, that's so true. That's a really good point. We just learn to process better, we kind of get used to it. And so, all right, so there you are. And you say, what was the moment where you were like, because that's a hard decision to give up the thing that you wanted so much, worked endlessly for, and achieve it. And then, I get that, the world was shook up and everybody, but was it just like you woke up one day and was like, no, this has to happen, I'm done, and you make that call? Or were you like mulling this over for a while?
It was like a 1.5 year process before I actually pulled the trigger. I'd been getting frustrated, just not feeling into the work as much. It's tough to keep going. Like, just because you can do something at a high level doesn't mean it doesn't get boring for you. It was starting to get boring. I was looking at the markets and going, what do I actually want to tell people to invest in? Like, I'm a big believer in crypto, and Mike Morgan is actually crushing it on the crypto promos over at Money Map. But I'm a big believer in cannabis, and those stocks tanked. So I started doing cannabis promotions, and it's, something I'm invested in. Jed's opening up Hastoria in Newark, New Jersey, and I'm invested in that. Like, it's an industry I believe has a lot of potential, but the promos weren't working. So all the stuff that was working was like options trading. And that is just boring to me. You're listing gains over and over. You're doing technical analysis. You have to make it sound like it's magic, essentially. And so I was getting frustrated for years, for well over a year. And, I work with a coach / therapist, Brent Charlton, who actually a lot of copywriters have been working with. And so we were just talking about it for over the course of a bunch of months. Him cautioning me, because Money Map paid a really nice retainer, and the royalty checks were nothing to sneeze at. And actually, they're still coming in. There's a tail on those things. But I think if you're going to grow as a person, sometimes you have to make those hard decisions and let go of. It's almost golden handcuffs in a way. You got to get out of it and move on to the next phase of your life. I just turned 37. Well, now it's a couple months ago now, but I'm at the point in my life where I have had successes at a younger age, essentially. So it's time. What's next? I don't want to be a copywriter forever. It just doesn't feel like that's not why I'm here, right? That's not the highest mission in life. It's a great step. It's an essential skill for online businesses, but I just don't think it's fulfilling over, a longer period for me. I know people like David Deutsch and Paris love it, although they both have their own side projects going on, even though they've been doing it for 40 years. I don't know. It felt like the right time, and it felt like I could get passionate about the Liberty stuff, and I just couldn't get passionate about financial copy anymore.
And did you try at all to propose ideas for how to, quote unquote, sell Liberty, or come from that angle with campaigns at all within Money Map?
I mean, I've been sneaking libertarian ideas and Austrian economics into my promos for years, because inherently they're superior economics in my view. So kind of, it's hard to push. Like, what's the Austrian case for a short selling? It doesn't work as much on the shorter term. Yeah. But I mean, think about the cannabis legalization is a huge issue for libertarians. And I definitely pushed that hard through the National Institute for Cannabis Investors stuff that I was writing. Crypto is a huge thing for libertarian leaning people. And we were definitely pushing that hard. So the ideas are in there, but I don't know. At the end of the day, I'd rather be more direct about it.
Yeah. And so now you say, okay, great. I'm going to do my thing. And I know what I want to talk about. So for people, and the podcast is great. Practical Liberty is the name. It's gone through a name change. It was originally like getting out of the machine, right?
Yeah, it's a very ready, fire, aim Mark Ford was my first kind of mentor in copywriting. He's the guy that introduced me to Jed. He wrote the book Ready, Fire, Aim. So once I decided to pull the trigger, I thought of the getting out of the machine resonated with a lot of people, just the sentence. But as a podcast title, it was a little clunky. Yeah, at the Knoxville event, actually, is when I decided, came down there with you and Rachel, got some really great ideas for growing the podcast and business. And everybody liked Practical Liberty better. It just resonated. It's an easier title to tell people.
Yeah, it's got a nice bounce to it. It's really good. So Practical Liberty is the podcast. You're about 10 or so episodes in now.
30.
30 already. Oh, wow. That's right. You're releasing every week. Very cool. And so enjoying that. What have you learned from podcasting so far?
It's very interesting to get to talk to a lot of libertarian leaning people. I have an interesting balance between episodes where I just get on and rant. Like that's what I'm releasing this week is just me getting on camera and ranting. And people really love those. But then I got to talk to some really interesting people. Clint Russell I had on a few weeks ago. He was a hard money lender in California. He saw a decline coming. He didn't like the regulation. So he sold his $1 million business and moved to Florida and started a podcast. And he just has really interesting economic insights. I don't know. It's been fun to explore these topics and actually sit down and dedicate time to reading people's books. I had a guy on last week, Nick Watts. He wrote a book called Crypto for Conservatives, which is, he was a fascinating story. He came to his libertarian politics he was in divinity school by studying the Bible. He wanted to know the biblical answer to what is the appropriate tax rate. By the time he got done studying, he decided the biblical tax rate is 0% and taxation is slavery. And just finding people that have those kind of stories that get into those, the same thought process I have through different means is fascinating to me. But yeah, I don't know. I like getting on and talking. I like the editing. The whole thing's kind of fun.
Doing it all yourself. Yeah, it is. My friend and I had a radio show doing comedy called The Inside Joke Show where I would do bits and we would interview comics. And I never had more fun in my life than waking up. I had this shitty little microphone and I would record, layers of bits and sit there in the editor and, I can put a sound effect here. And I mean, it's one of those things, if I could get paid really well to do this, I would love it. But then, you end up going other ways. But it is really fun to produce a thing. You could sit there at your desk with a microphone. And especially now, you could you could create whole worlds out of that, if you wanted to add layers and bring people places. It's pretty incredible. But like you said, the networking aspect of it, I was listening to Chris Haddad, who just started a podcast as well. It's doing really, really good. And he was saying that like the networking part of it is just unsurpassed. And I've always found that to be true. Like I always felt like a kid in a candy store, especially with Truth About Marketing, talking to guys like you and Mark Ford and Paris and Clayton Makepeace, and just they give you their full attention for basically as long as you want it. And if you was like, I was at a conference with those guys before I made it, I'd be nervous, maybe trying to ask one question and then getting out of their face. It's incredible to have those conversations.
Yeah, it opens up a lot of doors just having the podcast. I haven't had anybody say, no, I'm not coming on your podcast. It's too small. I'm only getting like 1,000-ish downloads per episode across all the platforms. So it's not, it's not huge, but like, I don't know, Clint Russell has a podcast where 10,000 people listen. Tom Woods, who's a big libertarian podcaster, I sent him an email and he had me about copywriting because it's a pretty good career for libertarian-minded people that want to be independent. He brought me out to speak at his event and then had me on his podcast, which really blew up my podcast a little bit. And yeah, they're just nice people. The thing about podcasters that I've noticed that's different. So I've met a lot of celebrities just through some of the charity stuff I've done. I've met a lot of politicians. And now I'm starting to meet a lot more podcasters. Podcasters are exactly the same in person as they are in real life, whereas politicians and celebrities it's just this facade. There's an angle there. It's not as real. So I don't know. Podcasters just seem to be better people.
Yeah. Or definitely more real. Like you said, I think that's what makes a podcast work. That's the beauty of the medium is like, if you're forcing it or faking it, you may have a different kind of audience. Like if you're doing a reality show recap, Sure. You could be a Tonight Show host or whatever. But for the most part, what people like is resonance. I'm just curious is because, you've been in copywriting so long and we think about people's motivations. Do you think part of what makes, say, a show like Rogan's, right? Do people listen because in large part they're lonely? And it's just nice to hear a good conversation because they find them difficult to create in real life?
I'm sure there's a portion of that audience that's just lonely. One of his biggest demographics is like truck drivers, people that are just sitting in a truck for 12 hours a day. And that's going to be lonely. I don't know. There's an intimacy that you create with people when they hear you talk for hours and hours, right? I put out 30 hours of content now, essentially. If you've been listening to me for 30 hours and you're hearing my real thoughts, it is like connecting with a friend sometimes. That, like, I'm sure you have your list of podcasts that come on and you listen to. And there's some that I listen to for the news or the analysis. And then there's some that, I listen to Rogan, I don't know, probably about half his episodes, maybe less than that. But you feel like, I don't know, it feels warm and safe in some way, right? It's, this is, I know this is a good person trying to figure out things. So I think there is an intimacy, whether it's just because people are lonely. I don't know.
I don't think just that. I just wonder, because I always think about Carlton say that most people live lives of quiet desperation. The Thoreau thing, and I always think that when I think, it was 10, 12 million people tuning in to Rogan regularly. It's like, there's a reason for that, because those aren't like passive conversations he's having. Any good podcast, hopefully, is going a little deep. And certainly the stuff you're talking about, you're educating people. What kind of feedback are you getting? Are people saying, thank you for saying this out loud? Are they saying, or is it a lot more of, man, you really got me thinking about stuff I hadn't considered before? Yeah,
I've been pretty surprised at the reaction. I was in the college libertarians. I kind of had this, and then I walked away from politics for a few years because, like, after what they did to Ron Paul in 2008, I was just like, there's no chance for this system. I'm just going to play whatever side I think is going to win and kind of not think about it. So I kind of hid my politics. I didn't talk much publicly about my views. And also it got to be a crap show on social media. So one of the biggest surprises is how many people have come to me and being like, yeah, that's exactly right. I've been thinking this stuff. I'm a libertarian. I'm a secret libertarian. People are scared to share their views when it's this far outside of the kind of mainstream acceptable views of allowable thought, essentially.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
I do get a lot of people that are copywriters that listen to me because they know who I am through the copywriting world. And They go, I don't agree with everything, but you make some really interesting points. The feedback's been good so far.
Yeah, I'm sure. Look, I get it. I know there's so many communities, I'm doing air quotes, communities for entrepreneurs out there, all filled with their own version of overnight experts chirping at you from behind the screen. You got your Facebook groups, your clubhouse rooms, just experts galore. How often do you feel like you're being pinballed around from thing to thing and picking up a little bit, a little piece there? How much of that is actually making it into your brain and your fingers and your business and affecting your money? How many of these people are actually out there in the field getting their hands dirty and testing to find out what actually works and what flops? Well, in the Copy Chief community, a real community, you get shoulder to shoulder with the most active, successful marketers working in the trenches today, all while learning from industry legends who rarely teach anywhere else, if ever. Copy Chief is an amazing community, super newbie friendly. Also, you'll find, elite level marketers and copywriters in there. They're all working to become the best at their craft, get paid top dollar for their skills, stay ahead of the competition by keeping their finger on the pulse of what's working now. That's the X factor when you're backed up by a community and you can get any question you have answered by people who actually do this stuff and can tell you from real world experience what to do for your project, for your offer, for your funnel, for your clients. Man, you're unstoppable when you've got that kind of confidence. Go check us out at copychief.com/join. If you've never been a member, you're going to see what you've been missing and you're going to say, where has this been all my life? And if you've been a member in the past, I would invite you to come and check out all the new stuff. We've completely updated all the tech. So we're on brand new platforms. Everything is slick and smooth and easy to access. And it's never been better. Copychief.com/join. I'll look for you inside. What are a couple of the things that seem to resonate most? Like teach us a little about libertarianism if people don't really know what that is. I know you've got the four cornerstones, so maybe we go through those, because I'd love this, like a quick education on it for people who are like, I hear that word, I kind of get it means like I want to be left alone and free to do my thing, but what does it really mean?
If you wanted to boil down my idea of libertarianism into a simple, like, kind of slogan, it would be that you own yourself. It's all about self-ownership. So you can't tell me what to do and I can't tell you what to do. Like, I have autonomy over my body, my thoughts, my actions. The main principle in the libertarian is the non-aggression principle. It's you can't initiate force on anyone else. So, that's where people get to, our ideas of like taxation is theft, or at least coercion, because you're forcing me to do something, forcing me to pay something. Also, by the way, taxation, the whole IRS throws out the idea of the Fifth Amendment. Like, you are forced to incriminate yourself every year about exactly what you made. And if you lie, you go to jail. You can't hide it. Or you don't go to jail. You get fined. If you don't pay the fines, you go to jail. But yeah, right. I mean, I think we put too many people in cages for too many stupid things. You can't just take somebody's, that's taking their autonomy. And I think you should have a pretty high bar for what it takes to remove somebody's liberty from them.
Yeah. And it's not. If we look at the prison system alone, right?
It's a mess.
Stay there for a second. And again, I haven't heard you talk about these things, so I'm just going to throw things that I'm curious about. Because you said putting people in cages, right? Like, what are some numbers of, statistics of how much resource we waste locking people up rather than rehabilitating them, or the stupid reasons we lock them up in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the prison statistics as far as like money spent in incarceration. I do know we have the largest incarcerated population in the world, which is for a country of 350 million people, when there's India that has 1.3 billion and China that has, China is we highlight as the authoritarian state, has fewer people in prison than us. But I think the biggest problem is that there's always the threat there to put you in a cage. Like, if you could get a parking ticket and then you don't pay it because you don't think you owed it. And then eventually those fines increase. And at the end of all of this, there's a long process to get there, but you can go to jail for not paying a parking ticket if you push it off long enough. Right. So the threat of the cage is always there. And, for something as stupid as that, I just can't see how you can justify it. I'm not a Donald Trump fan. He just announced his presidency bid. And one of the things he talked about was executing drug dealers, which is the stupidest thing. I just don't understand it. If you own your own body, shouldn't you be able to put in it whatever you want? And then we can go through the different things that the FDA does that keeps these drugs illegal, when you're forcing people to choose stuff like fentanyl when you could get pharmacy grade heroin. And, it's not a great choice to make with your life. But like, again, I don't think you should be put in a cage for that. There are things that are bad to do that you shouldn't be locked up for. And that's most things. You can be self-destructive with drugs. There's no doubt about it. Like, even cannabis, even weed, like, people use it as a crutch. They sit at home all day and smoke. And I don't think that's a good idea. But also, it's not my body, man. It's not my choice. You should have the freedom to ruin your own life. But then you should also have the freedom to succeed beyond your wildest dreams. Like, liberty comes with up and down sides. It's not a perfect solution. Like, it's all about trade-offs.
Because you mentioned non-aggression. And so are you for laws that protect people from other people? Like, if somebody takes drugs and gets all fucked up and goes driving their car through a crowd of people, obviously they should be punished. It's not like, oh, well, that's what that guy decided to do today, right? I mean,
there's definitely reasons to, like, if you murder somebody, I don't think you should just walk free. That's right. You've committed the ultimate act of aggression. You don't get to just get away from that. But I just don't think the way that we currently enforce our laws, and every day you break a law and you don't even know it because there's too many of them. Like, you can't even read. There's no chance for a single human to know all the laws, even in just their local area. It's a mess the way we do things. I tend to prefer a system of like private governance where you get to opt in. Like, it's 100% democracy instead of 51% democracy. It's like you're there because you volunteered to be there. So you get to sign up. It's like you could have homeowners associations where you've all agreed that, we're not going to paint our houses pink and we're not putting junk cars in the lawn. And that's fine. That's a voluntary arrangement. So if you do something voluntarily, it's fine. But I don't know, if you live in a society, you do need laws, right? I'm not a chaotic anarchist. I just believe that the system that people in California get to vote on what my laws in Pennsylvania are doesn't make any sense to me.
Right.
So it's mass decentralization would be what I'd advocate for politically if I got the chance, although they don't ever listen to me. So,
so mass decentralization, meaning individual laws per more geographical state laws even more local than that. So then you could have more choice about what you buy into, what you agree to.
Yeah, absolutely. So the more local the law, I think the more reasonable it is, because it's the people there are actually affected by it. The people implementing it have to live under it. So I have a lot more access to like a mayor in a local town than I do to the president of the United States or any congressman. So yeah, I mean, I advocate for national divorce. I think we have a military that invades every country in the world whenever it wants. It sends billions of dollars to fight a war that we have no interest in, that could get us involved in a nuclear conflict. And not that I support Russia at all. That was horrible what they did. But I just don't think when you centralize this much power and you give a handful of people access to the strongest military force that has ever existed, they're going to abuse it. And we've seen that repeatedly. My big libertarian case back when I was in college was the Iraq War and the Afghan War. I was just like, this is insane. I don't know if you remember how big some of those anti-war protests were back then, because it didn't get covered a lot on the news, but people were against that war from the beginning, and for obvious reasons now. It's been a mess.
Dude, I remember very clearly the day the war started, because I had to do a show that night. It felt crazy to do a show. Why in the world would we go try to tell silly jokes? And we did it, but you could just feel it. I would equate it up there with in my life back when things used to have a huge impact, which they don't seem to anymore, because everybody's attention and emotions are so fractal. But the Challenger explosion, it was up there as a national doomsday kind of a feeling. I don't remember anybody feeling like gung ho or USA. It was just the opposite of people just, I can't believe this is happening.
Yeah, we got lied into that war. If you go back through history, there's a great book by Ashley Rinsberg called The Gray Lady Winked, and it documents all of the lies the New York Times has told over the years to get people into wars. And you could go back to basically Spanish-American War, and it was based on newspaper propaganda. World War I, World War II, these were all, you can argue that some of them had just causes. World War I's hard to argue. It was a just cause. I understand the arguments for World War II. I technically think they would have imploded. That was just, you had a meth addict, an anti-Semitic meth addict running a country. It was not going to last. But anyway, like they just lie us into war over and over. And the internet's been a huge blessing in that it gets the information out there in ways that those media outlets were controlled before, that they don't have the monopoly on information anymore. But yeah, I mean, so much war it's just such pointless violence to keep a power structure that doesn't benefit people as much as they claim it does.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's funny. I have a sense that there's this unfortunate irony in wanting to be a voice about this, in wanting to do everything you can to help other people understand that they should have more liberty, means that you have to not ignore all the things that you want to be left alone about. Right? Yeah. I mean, it's almost, I guess the other thing would be to like be a pacifist and try to go, well, it's not, I don't know, it's not my problem.
It's funny because you were asking about libertarianism in general. What I actually focus on the podcast is like your own life. Like I call it practical liberty because like I can go out and advocate that we end all the wars and nobody's going to listen to me. It doesn't make any difference. I'm screaming into the void. But Harry Brown back in the 80s, he was a presidential candidate on the Libertarian ticket. He wrote a book called How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World. And it's literally just all the things he does to make sure, they write these rules, but they're also incompetent in enforcing them. And there's ways around it. So one of the things he did is he had a big a sales business at the time. And they told him that all these regulations came down and he was going to have to pay all these extra things for his employees and this health insurance and other kinds of like taxes. So he fired all of his employees and hired them all back as contractors. And it was just a workaround. Like there's all these workarounds that you can go out and get around these laws that are, it's a pain in the butt, but at the same time, you can be free in your own life.
Does this come down to granular stuff in like, I've heard people say, and I don't want to pin this on libertarians, but like with driving, like you can't give me a ticket because I'm not driving, I'm traveling. Like that, is that where it starts to get a little ridiculous or?
Yeah, I mean, I can get into the libertarian weeds on those arguments of why like seatbelt laws and driver's licenses are not necessarily moral. But at the same time, like, dude, they just locked us in our house for 2 years. They're killing people all over the world. We're throwing poor black men in jail at unprecedented rates for drug laws that are not helping anything. Like, when was the last time we won a war on poverty, drugs, anything? We don't win those wars. We just spend billions of dollars and export pain to the rest of the world. Until we end the wars, I'm not going to care much about driver's licenses. Like, it just doesn't make sense to argue about that stuff.
Yeah. Good answer. All right, let's run through the 4 cornerstones again, because I think this is a great way. And this is a course you and Rachel worked on together.
Yeah, Rachel really helped me, and at the Knoxville event, we really kind of came up with like a framework to help me. So the 4 things, I call them the 4 cornerstones of liberty. I also have an acronym, SWAN, because they're the 4 areas that I think if you build on those areas, you have more independence and freedom in your own life. So SWAN stands for security, wealth, awareness, and network. I mean, I can kind of run through them. Security is basically, if people can just take your stuff, you're not very free, right? If people can, especially digital security these days, if people know everything you're thinking and you're easily bannable and they can get your bank accounts and your money's in like a big national bank, that stuff can just be taken from you. So you have to focus on security or there's nothing else, right? I had a podcast guest that has a great privacy action plan. It's basically helping people become more anonymous and more secure online. And one of the things he said is there is no freedom without privacy. You're too easily controlled if people know everything you're thinking, everything you're doing, where your money is. So security, and if people can come in and kill you, obviously you need some form of self-defense. I'm a big advocate for guns, but then you also need to train on guns. You can't just have them lying around your house like an idiot. So security there. Wealth is, I talk about there's basically 3 reasons to get wealthy. One is status, which is just a treadmill. If you try to get rich to be more popular, more attractive, whatever, you're always going to be chasing somebody and your life's going to be miserable. There's power, and those people are scary. If you want wealth to accumulate power over other people, it's like the opposite of libertarianism. It's also how, I don't know if you've noticed campaign donations, it's how our government runs, is power accumulated through wealth. And then there's freedom. And so wealth does allow you to do things that you couldn't otherwise do. Like in the middle of the pandemic, I had a house in Philly, and I was not happy with the way Philadelphia was responding to the pandemic. And at the same time, we had the BLM marches that were going right behind my house. And then there was rioting, and it was just loud and unsafe. But I had enough money that I picked up and bought a house in the mountains in cash. Like, wealth gives you options that not having wealth, takes away from you. There's also like the corporate treadmill is not, people don't understand the economic rules anymore. Like, they're living in the economic rules of the 1950s and 60s, and the game has changed. I think everybody should be a contractor if they have the ability to, and most people can, and they don't know it. Like, there's a lot of computer programmers and designers and even lawyers they work on a contract basis. You don't need to have the same employee structure as before. And there's different ways you can get around that. And then there's investing. If you don't know where to put your money and how to grow it, you're going to have a problem because it runs out otherwise due to the Federal Reserve causing massive inflation. So awareness is kind of, you have to know what's going on in the world. You have to know where the threats are coming from. You have to understand certain philosophical principles. At least if you're going to live life like I do, you have to have a philosophical basis for it. You can't just be winging it. And then you need to know what's going on in the world. Just opportunities don't come out of nowhere. And if you don't know where to look, you're not going to find them. And then network is just, I come off as this radical individualist, and that's a lot of libertarians do. Like, we don't need anybody, but that's not true. Everybody needs people. You cannot have a successful business. You can't have a successful life if you're trying to do it all on your own. So strategically building up a network of people that don't hate you, aren't going to kick you out if you say something wrong. They're going to be there to support you. And then in turn, you're going to be able to support them. Everybody grows together in that area. So yeah, those are the 4 areas: security, wealth, awareness, network. And there's a lot of little lessons you can learn here and there. That's what the course is. It's basically just giving you a basic foundation to start building from in each of those 4 areas.
Yeah, very cool. Love it. So it's kind of like a starter pack for people who, just want to understand what's going on and what they can do to be more secure. Wealth is obviously a lifelong strategy, but I'm sure there's things you can do right now to protect your money.
There's things you can do to protect it. There's also like things you can do to start building it. Like, if there's so many people they've been, you see them, and I'm sure around the Copy Chief community, that they want to be a copywriter. They've been thinking about it for years, or they want to own their own business. There's never been a better time than right now to start, honestly. There's massive economic pain already, but I think the downturn is going to get even bigger, not better, way worse. But in those chaotic times is when most opportunities are born. Like, most of the biggest businesses, like Uber started in 2008, right? Became a multi-billion-dollar business. And it was born in the middle of the biggest recession we'd had since the Great Depression. I mean, there's all these opportunities when the markets crash and people panic to start building a business. And then there's things like crypto right now that I think are going to be, generational game changers. So obviously the FTX thing kind of scared the crypto market a little bit, but I still believe in the principle of decentralized money. Yeah, there's a lot of ways to start building your wealth.
Cool. All right. So I want to give away, you're generous in offering a special, because we do have a copywriting audience, and obviously they know you as a great copywriter, and you have taught a lot, and I'm sure have wealth more to teach on it. And so there is a download that I'm going to find here in a second. henrybing.co/breakdown. Breakdown.
henrybing.co/breakdown. Yeah, Marcella and Allison and I did this a couple of years ago. Marcella was actually, when she was running Titan Eyes before she sold that business, she was selling this for like $600, and it's a 3-hour breakdown of a cannabis sales letter I chiefed Marcella through. And you know how Marcella is really good at extracting the lessons of different things, and she records everything. So there's actual recordings of us coming up with the big idea and the hooks and all that. So yeah, it's a cool little video course.
That's awesome. There's no copywriter who wouldn't want this and shouldn't study this. So henrybing, BING.co/breakdown. It'll be in the show notes. Generous of you to give that away. And thank you to Marcella as well. One of the most generous people I've ever known. We'll be watching, man. Practical Liberty is the podcast. Listen. I know for people like me, where it's like, most people want to kind of just go through their life and not have bad shit happen. But you can't skate forever. You got to be proactive. That's what I take from this. There are times when I just feel, I know how vulnerable I am. Even like you say, just like, I can't expect that I go to the ATM and my money's going to be there every time. Like, I have no control over that. I can't believe we haven't been hacked. Our financial system hasn't been hacked yet, right? And so we're all living on this razor's edge. And I think paying attention to what you're doing here and why you're doing it is a really smart thing.
Yeah, it's something, that means a lot to me. And the people that are following seem to be getting a lot out of it. Freedom is like a universal human desire. It's freedom and safety. Those are the kind of two spectrums, and finding the balance there is interesting. And I think we've swung way too hard in the direction of safetyism and giving up too much freedom. And that's been going on ever since the Patriot Act back in 2001. So I think it's time to take another swing towards freedom.
I love it. Well, thank you, Henry. Henry Bingaman. We'll be checking back in, man. I can't wait to see how the product launch does and how all this grows and changes for you. I know you're doing it by feel. No big agenda here other than to share information that's been important to you and been life-changing for you. So thank you, man.
Thank you.
Hey, don't forget your goodies. Head over to copychief.com/copychiefradio to get some great free stuff to help you put the things you hear on the show into action for your business. copychief.com/CCR.